Hello and welcome back everyone to our 9-month Ultimate World Cruise Adventure, and today we have a special one. Today we go to the Demilitarized Zone between North and South Korea, one of the most heavily militarized and hostile areas in the world, and I get within 170 meters of North Korea.
Welcome to Living Phase 2.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nancy, and we're empty nesters striving to live life to the fullest.
And we're living that full life aboard Royal Caribbean's 9-month Ultimate World Cruise on Serenade of the Seas.
We are, well, friends, today we are in Seoul, South Korea. This is where our ship has docked, and as we exit our ship, we are at a very nice terminal here. It's very easy to get around, very easy to navigate. Almost like an airplane.
Right, it's got jetways that come right out to the ships. Because sometimes we just have a little ramp, and this was actually
nice
very nice and
and
easy
modern.
to navigate.
It was. Well, what we have planned today, though, is we've got a private organized tour that's taking us to the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone between North and South Korea. And this has been an area that Mike has been really looking forward to seeing. He's a real history buff. So he's going to be explaining most of all of this to you.
Well, why don't we take just a step back in history for 1 minute so that we're all level set on what happened. So during World War II, Japan occupied the Korean Peninsula, and after World War II, Korea was then divided between the North and the South Korea, with the North being a communist country, the South being a non-communist at the 38th parallel. And so what happened after that was almost immediately after that, North Korea in 1950, so only 3 years after the end of World War II, North Korea attacked South Korea to try to unify the Korean Peninsula under a communist regime. And they drove the South Koreans all the way to the very southern end of the Korean Peninsula. Well, that's when the United Nations got involved. They built a coalition of many countries, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, lots of countries were involved with this action, but it was led by the United States, and Douglas MacArthur, the general from World War II, led those troops and pushed the North Koreans all the way back up right to the border with China. Well, that's when China really kicked in, got involved, and this became what you call a proxy war between China and the United States until it was driven to a stalemate in 1953. And at that point, an armistice was signed to end the hostilities and to agree that North and South Korea would be divided. And in the end, that division happened with a demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. But it's important to note that the war is not over. This was not a truce. This was not a surrender. The war is technically still going on between North and South Korea. It's just a ceasefire right now. So this is one of the most hostile, heavily militarized areas in the world that North and South Korea are still facing off between each other. And that's what the DMZ is. The DMZ is the 4-kilometer wide strip, 250 miles all the way across the Korean Peninsula, that separates North and South Korea. In addition to that, there's an additional 4-kilometer buffer on each side that stretches past the DMZ that each country has established. And so that's where we're going to visit today, is actually go into the demilitarized zone, past that buffer zone, and see what there is to see there, and to be able to look across to North Korea. So that's the quick history. So
thank you.
So where's no? That's
Appreciate
fine.
that. So we had a tour guide that took us to Imjingak Park, and she was able to take us around and show us different things. There were a couple of the last trains there on display. The last train coming from North Korea, and the last train coming from South Korea. Now, the train coming from South Korea, that one was involved with a lot of trade. I think they were still hoping for relations to go well there. And so that was a very nice looking train. But the train that was coming from North Korea, that was when they were fighting, correct?
Yes.
And you see bullet holes in that train.
Where they attacked and destroyed the train, and it left it right where it was at. Yeah.
Right. So,
during the war.
But I think there was a lot of hope that things could be reunited, and this whole area, there's still a lot of hope that things can be reunited. So moving along into the park, there's a lot of what I would call juxtaposition here. There's a mourning wall, almost like a wailing wall,
a monument, yeah.
where people whose families got split up, where part of the family is still, or friends are still in North Korea, and some of them escaped to South Korea. They come on weekends to this monument, to this memorial, and they cry. They just literally cry and mourn and pray for their families and loved ones who are in North Korea. Well, I mean, this has been happening for years now. So some of the younger generation doesn't exactly understand why there's still all this mourning and sense of loss there. But the younger generation goes with the older generation to this mourning area of mourning. But there was nothing for them to do, so they built them an amusement park. You've got the mourning, the crying happening here, and then just a half a block away is an amusement park for the children to be entertained.
Yeah, it was
very unusual.
It was very unexpected as well,
Yes.
right? It's really an entertainment complex. They've got all these things going on, and yet you've got barbed wire and ribbons hanging and mourning, and I never expected to see that there, and it was really interesting. But in a way, it kind of makes sense a little bit, so that the younger generation can support the older generation. But yeah, it was kind of surprising, let's put it that way. Well, some other things that were in the park is there was a small little shop actually selling North Korean money, and so you could get a souvenir of stamps or money from North Korea. And there was some restaurants, and I mean, it's just a nice visitor center. Another thing that's there is a gondola ride that goes over this buffer zone, and again, this area is mined, but it also, the areas that aren't mined, they do some farming. So we went up in the gondola ride and took it all the way across the river to the other side, where we could look out and see kind of that pre-buffer zone area, and you could also see where it was mined.
Right.
You could see where they had all the warning signs not to leave that zone on the other side.
And when we say it's mined, I mean they say there's over 1 million landmines in this area
across the DMZ.
Yes.
Yeah. So it is not, you pay attention to everything here.
Yeah.
You don't go wandering off, and of course they've got fences and barbed wire and everything.
Very easily,
no.
Yeah.
But it was a nice gondola ride. We got to look back at the park. We got to look across at the exclusion zone, and then after that, it was time for our trip into the DMZ. And I guess this is a time to describe trips into the DMZ. Your tour guide and bus just doesn't drive in there. You have to get a very specific time ticket. Everyone who goes in the DMZ has to have a passport, your actual physical passport, and that passport you have to be put on a list. And when you get on a separate bus, and these are specific buses that go into the DMZ, and then they stop you at the border, and they go through and they cross-check your passport against the list. And then after all of that,
they are meticulous.
Yes. Also, when you take a tour into the DMZ, it's a timed excursion. So once you cross the bridge, you only have a couple of hours you're allowed to be in the DMZ, and then your bus has to come and exit the DMZ. So you can't make your bus late. You have to be on time. You have to be very careful with that. So there's a lot of rules about going into the DMZ. Well, we went through that. Now, we don't have any video of us actually crossing into the DMZ because the soldiers, they request that you don't do any, well, not just request, you're not allowed to do any filming, anything like that, while the cross checks and passport checks are going on. Then once you get driving again, you go across the cow bridge.
Right, and the cow bridge is named the cow bridge because South Korea was giving North Korea hundreds of cows, kind of, as a peace offering, would you say? That's the best way I can describe it.
And
again, trying to make things, just to make things better. Yes. And so all these cows cross the bridge. You can see a picture of that here.
Right.
But that's why it's called the cow bridge.
Right. So we went across the cow bridge, and the first place we went to
were the tunnels. And these tunnels are coming from North Korea to South Korea, and they have currently found 4 tunnels. They think there could be as many as a couple of dozen tunnels, but they've found 4 that were headed towards South Korea. This one, tunnel number 3, we actually have access to get into because they built kind of an interception tunnel, and you went in the tunnel. I did not, because the tunnel is very tight, very confined, very short, and so you have to walk squatting down. But why don't you tell them about your experience?
Yeah, so the tunnel is an 11-degree grade, which maybe it doesn't sound like that much, but 11-degree slope is actually quite a bit. And you go for almost a kilometer on this 11-degree grade in the tunnel the South Koreans dug to intercept the North Korean tunnel. And then you hit the North Korean tunnel and it levels out and goes straight. But then you have to go about half a kilometer to, I think it's 3/4 of a kilometer. And that takes you right up to the border with North Korea within 170 meters. And you're underground in this tiny little tunnel, and they've got metal scaffolding framing to make sure the tunnel doesn't collapse. You wear a hard hat while you're down there, because believe me, I hit my head at least 10 times with this hard hat on that frame, because you're all squatted over. It's only it's less than 5 feet high, this tunnel, so you're squatched over the whole time
and
on
you're
through
6
here.
foot,
Yeah,
so.
and there were some people even taller than me going down through there, and after a couple of kilometers of bending over and squatting and everything, your back can get pretty sore. But it was very fascinating to see.
You could not take your cell phone. You couldn't take anything.
No,
they did not allow anything there. So I kept your phone up above.
You went through a metal detector before you went down into the tunnel, so no pictures, no cameras, no phones, nothing. So that's why we don't have any video showing you this. But it was really amazing. Once you get to the very end of the tunnel, there's 3 concrete walls that South Korea put in. There's one right at the border with North Korea. Then there's a second and a third. So you see the third wall, there's a window in it you can see through to the second concrete wall. And then they have a video camera and a monitor there showing what's between the second and the first wall that's right on the border. And the interesting part was there's always a light in there with the camera, and moss and ferns and all kinds of things have grown up in this sealed space in there.
Down so deep, so far below ground.
Yeah, and you can see right there to this wall at the border with North Korea. So, and that third wall is 170 meters between that wall and the border. So that's the closest that we could get at this time to go to the closest we could get to North Korea. So then I worked my way back, went back up that kilometer of 11% grade, and met you at the top. They have a little shopping center gift shop thing.
A little gift shop, and we got something. I think it was made in North Korea.
Yeah, so this is the one thing
made
that's
in the DMZ.
Yeah, so it's one thing that's allowed to be traded with North Korea is some of their like cognac and some of their wine, and so that's what you see above us. So this is like a bottle of DMZ wine, and some friends of ours actually bought one as well. We had it at dinner the other night. It's okay. It's pretty sweet. It's not. Yeah, it's just okay. We haven't tried any of the other. We got 3 different products we've got there, so we haven't tried those yet. We're going to do that with some friends, but we thought that was an interesting souvenir to bring back. And I got a patch from the DMZ as well, and we left the tunnel complex and we went to
an observation area, kind of a little observation tower. I found this to be very interesting because we went outside at the top of the tower, and they had the large binoculars that you could look, and you could see into North Korea. So we could see their watchtower, we could see their flag, we could even see a soldier smoking a cigarette outside of the watchtower. Right. So I thought that was kind of interesting and neat to see.
Yeah, you can see the North Korean flag on this huge flagpole, and I guess it is one of the largest flagpoles in the world. And what had happened was South Korea had put up a flag, and it was like 50 feet high, and the North Koreans ran and built one that was like 75 feet, and then then the South Koreans built one that was 100 feet, and then 100 feet, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and finally North Korea put one up that's like 160 meters tall. It's this massive flag, and you can see pictures of it, and finally they just went, okay, this is silly. Let's just stop trying to build the tallest flagpole. And And so you can see that. We've got some pictures, both what we took, and then also our guide had some pictures that she had taken that she gave to us. And it was just fascinating to be able to, you're looking right there at North Korea. Now, this is a time to let you guys know there is another area of the DMZ that tours used to go to. It's called the Joint Security Area, JSA, and that is right on the border with North Korea. And that's where dignitaries would come. They would have negotiations. If you were going to meet between North and South Korea, they do it at the JSA right on the border. And this is a point where 35 South Korean and 35 North Korean soldiers are standing right across from each other, facing each other right there across the JSA. And tours used to be able to go to the JSA, and we could see it and see the table where different, dignitaries had negotiated. Unfortunately, last year, a crazy guy decided he was going to defect to North Korea, and he ran across the border during a tour and went into North Korea, got arrested, etc. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, but he immediately got arrested. He's since been returned to the United States and is now in prison in the United States. But the unfortunate result of that is, since last year, no tours have been allowed to go to that JSA area, and it's unknown whether they're ever going to now allow tours that close to the border, right there next to North Korea. And as they always say, it only takes one person to run something.
That's a shame.
Yeah,
it really is.
So I was really looking forward to going to the JSA, but we're not allowed to go there now at this point. But you can see some pictures of the buildings and where it's at from the observation point. Well, after the observation tower?
Well, then we had lunch in the DMZ. So here's an interesting fact, friends. There is actually a town in the DMZ. Now, this town was there before the Demilitarized Zone was ever even established here. And so this town, there's no landmines. They have their own little community. But then there's only 500 people that live in this town. No more are allowed. Now, the reason they want to stay in this town is because they don't have to pay taxes, yet they get all of the benefits of being in South Korea. So it's a very good place to live, but 500 people, that's the maximum, and there is a waiting list to get into the town.
Yeah, so they have to re-register to be a DMZ citizen every year. If they miss their registration, or they decide not to re-register, or they pass away, then somebody else from the waiting list gets to then move into the DMZ. Now, what they do there is primarily it's farming and agriculture. The DMZ, there's no chemicals allowed to be brought into the DMZ. That means pesticides, anything, because obviously it's a demilitarized zone. They don't want something coming in that might be a toxic chemical or something of that nature. So all the farming that's done in the DMZ is all 100% organic. And so the products out of the DMZ, rice, sweet potatoes, ginseng, all those soybeans are all highly prized in South Korea because they're all organic and they're seen as being some of the best in South Korea. So they sell all that there. They sell DMZ rice. They sell everything. The ginseng they really push, at the gift shop, But as you said, all the buses have to stop there.
All the buses are required to stop in this town at their little lunch area. There's a buffet lunch, and attached to that is a little convenience store or gift shop area. So we had the buffet lunch. It was $9, and it was actually very good. And we had plenty to eat, and I thought it was all quite tasty. And while we were there, we right outside of the gift shop convenience store is an ice cream shop, and we had some of their soybean ice cream, which tasted kind of like peanut butter. And
it was okay. Kind of a weird consistency, and but we tried that as well. But that pretty much wrapped up our tour to the DMZ, going from the tunnel to the observation, and then to the restaurant gift shop area inside the town. And of course, we got to drive through the town and see it. But that is a trip to the DMZ. Every bus that goes in the DMZ is going to do those 3 stops, and then it has to get back out at its timed exit.
Well, after we're driving back from the DMZ back to Seoul, we're passing all of these apartments that just kind of arise out of nowhere. Big, tall, high rises, very modern and futuristic looking, really.
Yeah, it is. They're quite fascinating to see. Their architecture's just it's beautiful yet futuristic. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. And we made it back to the ship. Yeah.
We did. The next day is a sea day. And really, friends, we spend our sea days recording videos or editing videos.
Yeah.
So there's not too much excitement going on the sea day.
Mm-hmm.
But the day after,
We're going to be in Beijing, China, and we get a tour of the Forbidden City. But even better than that, we get to see the Great Wall of China in a way that almost no one else ever gets to see it. So be sure to tune in for that.
yeah, don't be sure to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. And, well, Mike, now that we've been to Seoul, do you want to come back?
Korea, I think Korea overall, absolutely. We had such a good time in Busan. We had an amazing time in Jeju-do Island. And really, we didn't get to see Seoul. We went to the DMZ.
Say, we really didn't see any of Seoul, so I wouldn't mind coming back just to see that.
Yeah, and some of our friends on the ship, they didn't go to the DMZ. They went and toured Seoul. And they said they enjoyed it very much. So I think we have a lot to see. The Korean people were so friendly, so welcoming and inviting.
I absolutely agree.
The food we did have there was very good. I think there's a lot more to see in Korea. And again, we say the World Cruise is the sampler platter. Well, this is probably a place where we want to come back and take seconds. So.
All right. Friends, thank you for being here with us for our trip through Seoul, and we will see you very soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.